Alright, today's video we are going to replace an axle seal in the Dana 44 in the 2005 Jeep LJ. We got the front tires blocked up. I got a jack underneath the rear axle and a jack underneath the frame. We're going to remove the tire, start removing the axle, and get ready to change the seal out. Much easier, eh?
I always forget about air.
Okay, since Kerri's Jeep was blessed with disc brakes, well, most of us have drums, what we're going to need is to remove the brake caliper and tie it up out of the way, and then remove the disc. That way we can remove the bolts so we can remove the axle. But once we get this out of the way, I don't think there's anything else we're going to need to remove, but we'll get that caliper disassembled. How'd that one come off? Good?
Better.
Now I'll grab something we could prop that up. Caliper's tied up, now we can pull the rotor off. Underneath, you can see where the axle's leaking. Since Kerri's Jeep's got a limited slip differential, we have to jack up the other tire because in order to get the bolts out, we got to utilize the hole in the flange to get the bolt in front. And then we got to put a wrench on the back. Okay, what you got to do is, I got a 14mm wrench on behind to hold the bolt head. And like I said, the axle flange has that hole for that, so we're going to use an impact gun to spin them off. Get her?
Yeah.
Alright, it's motherfucking beer time. So you don't need a wrench behind the dust shield. I thought you did. But those bolts must be pressed in, so disregard that. Have a motherfucking beer. Let's get back to the job. Get her? Yeah. Now we got all the bolts removed in order to get the Dana 44 axle out. And I'm hoping I can get it out without removing the parking brake. I'm not sure. But we're going to use a slide hammer, connect that to the axle, and that's how we exert force to get that axle out, because there's no C-clips in these axles like you find on the Dana 35, so they're actually held in by the 4 bolts or 4 nuts we just took off. So we'll hook this up and we'll slide hammer it out. Here we are attached to the axle. Wish us luck while we hopefully can get this out.
Yep.
Couple things we got to do yet. There's the inside race. We got to pull that out before we insert the new axle. Clean up as much oil as we can, because you can see where it had leaked out. Now before we go ahead and start tearing the axle apart, you want to look at the orientation of the seal. That's very important, because if you press everything back on and you have your seal on backwards, you're going to be fucked, because you're going to have to cut the bearing off. So what we're going to do now, we're going to drill a hole through this, use a cold chisel, break it, and then we're going to cut the outer race off, then the inner race off that bearing. What I did is I just drilled a pilot hole through the bearing retainer, and I marked it with tape on my drills, because you really don't want to drill into the axle, even though it's very possible that you're going to cut the axle while getting the bearing off. But you know, the least amount of damage we can do is the best. And I'm going to put a bigger drill in. It's going to be pretty close to the same width that we can drill through and then bust it off with a chisel. Oops.
Would it be easier if I...
Oh, we got it. Yeah, it split. Probably if we would have drilled it a little deeper, would have got easier. Now comes the fun part, cutting this bearing off. Make sure you have ear and eye protection. I'm going to use a little air saw right there. We're going to cut the outer race of the taper bearing off, and then the inner one. So I'm going to set the camera up over there and shine her down. So now we're ready. We got the bearing housing off. And what I did is I didn't cut through it, but I cut down shallow enough that the air chisel was enough to break it free. So now we're going to clean this up and use some emery cloth. You can see where the seal was right. Use some emery cloth on there to scuff it up once we're done. And then we're going to be ready to press the new bearing on. So Kerri's got this. Oh wait, I won't have to use the slide hammer. Looks like the race is just going to maybe come out. Well, it was coming out. Now we're going to use the slide hammer because it's got that little hook on it. And I'm just going to hook it on that bearing race and just gently and come up top here and on the side because it's being stubborn. There, we're out. So now we're ready, getting ready to press all these on. You want to make sure that the bearing, the taper bearing, goes on properly because the taper bearings are designed for lateral movement. So basically if you got two pointed in the same way, it cancels out. So the driver's side taper bearing goes towards the passenger side to exert, to handle force going that way. Saying the passenger side's the opposite side. So that's how these taper bearings work, because if you had a flat round bearing, it would come apart. So we got to make sure we have that in. The seal has to go in the right way. This has to go pointing out. The inside cavity has to go in, so it's got to go like that in the axle housing. And of course this has to go on last. I just polished off the seal surface with emery cloth. And now we're ready to reassemble everything. Remember which way this went on. And then the seal goes on next. Throw a little bit of grease on everything. That way that seal is not going to be on a dry surface. And also grease, a little light coat of grease will help make that bearing press on a little easier. Put the seal down carefully. Now the tapered roller bearing, one way to tell is that this ring was at the back, unless you want to pry this apart, but it's stuck because of the grease. Now we got to put that part in the press. So if you don't have a press, this is where you're going to have to take it to a machine shop or something.
A little more.
I think that's it.
I think so.
I used some gasket maker 515 and I went on the outside of that seal. Some people use RTV silicone, but the gasket maker is way better that way. If there's any leakage on the outside of that seal, that'll stop it. So now we're ready to insert the axle back in the housing. It's got a little indentation in there, and that little indentation is for right there. So now this is the fun part. Careful not to crush my thumb. There, we're in, and now you just gotta line this axle housing up. And we're gonna tighten these bolts by hand, so we'll get one snug here. We're gonna go to the opposite corner, then like this in a crisscross pattern, and then I'll get everything seated in place. Alright, we got that everything bolted down, and the reason why I said to go from here to here to here to here, because if you put the gun on this side and jam it down, you're going to twist that seal, and if you damage that seal when you're tightening it up, you're going to create a leak. That way if you tighten it up slowly, just a little bit here, then come over here for a bit, then tighten it up over here for a bit, and then come back down over here, and keep doing like a cross pattern. And then if you tighten it down slowly, you're going to get that seal on without damaging it. Otherwise you might end up doing this job all over again, and that would fucking suck. Kerri's just putting the tire back on then. Alright, it's motherfucking beer time now. that ends the video of replacing the rear seal in a Dana 44. Now, if you still have a leak afterwards, it is very possible you may have a bent axle shaft, which could be causing damage to that seal, or in a rare case you could have got a faulty seal, or you might have damaged it during the install. But most times you shouldn't have an issue. Anyways, I hope this video helps you. One of the most important things that you need is a press. So if you don't have access to a press, don't even try to attempt to do this job, because you're going to end up fucking yourself in the ass. Anyways, I'm going to get going. It's motherfucking beer time. If you have any questions or comments, post them below. Otherwise, thanks for watching.